everybody. Today is November 9th, and it's the first day that I am really working on studio stuff, art stuff, so I thought I would check in with you about that. I'm constructing the, oh sorry, there's light coming in on my face. Anyway, try to get a scenario where you don't have to deal with that change there. So I'm on page 8 of my poetry book. I finished the page, the construction, the piecing of the page. I'm now piecing the panel, the quilt panel that goes with the page. So if you're new to my channel, I'm working on a mixed media quilt project right now in collaboration with a friend who lives in the United States, and we exchanged fabric initially and made a piece on that, and then we started exchanging poetry. So we would each send each other poems till we have 12 poems. And we are each using different techniques to create a book, a sewn book based on that poetry. So for me, I'm extracting lines from the poems that I like, usually 3 to 4 lines per poem, and picking one of those lines to become a new poem that will be in the fabric book that I'm creating. So there's 1 line per page. And then with each page of the book, there is also a corresponding quilt panel that I am sewing, and so they will correspond to each other. The panel will also have lines from that same poem, and then the fabrics that I've used in the page will also be some of the fabrics that are in the panel, so that they kind of connect. And I am right now considering adding some sort of a little code, like a little circle of fabric that I would sew onto the corner of each page and then onto its corresponding panel. I don't know if it needs to be that literal, the connection, or not, so I'm still contemplating that. It would also serve as a place for people to understand where to put their fingers when they're turning the pages of the book. Because as you may or may not know, textiles are very easy to degrade. And so if you were to have an interactive object like a book and people were turning the pages, the oils from their hands will inevitably get onto those pages and cause the fabric to change. And I don't actually dislike that idea, because I think it connects the book in a way to entropy, and it also is marked by the people that read it, and I feel like there's something interesting there that I want to explore. So lots of things coming up with this project. It's really good. I'm hoping to get at least 2 and potentially 3 work days out of this next stretch of a few days of November, because I am not taking an official vacation or anything from work, but it just happened that there's a long weekend. And then also I worked a lot in October. If you watched my previous October vlog, I've already talked about how busy I was in October, how stressful the month was. And this month I'm taking it easy on my job as much as possible, giving myself some space to breathe and kind of recover from that, from the stress of that, from pushing myself to that, to that degree. And also it's my birthday month, so I like to, take some extra time in my birthday month to do a few things that I enjoy, and to contemplate life and contemplate where I am and all those types of things. It feels, I always kind of experience a new year feelings from November, like end of October to November 1st through to actual New Year's in January 31st or January 1st. So I kind of have this long period of reflection and renewal, because my birthday just happens to be near the end of the year. So that's what I'm working on today. And otherwise, it's pretty quiet right now on the art front. I don't have shows. I am contemplating also some applications, and those are mostly to artist residencies. I don't feel compelled to apply for shows right now. I think it's because the work that I've been exhibiting for the last 2 or 3 years and the work that I'm working on right now feels like there's been a bit of a jump in them. And I don't want to put a lot of pressure on myself to try to produce this work that I'm developing right now. There's basically 2 bodies of work too quickly, because I can't make it that fast. It's a slow process. It's all slow for me. And so I feel like if I started applying for shows, I would feel a lot more pressure to get this work out faster. And I have enough pressure in my life right now without adding that in. So I feel like this is maybe just a slow period in terms of shows from my career. And sometimes shows manifest that work and I apply. And I did apply for a show that would be running from January to March next year. And then I'll have this work that I'm working on right now, hopefully will be exhibited in May and an online show. And then I will have potentially a summer show. So there's already things coming up. It's not like there's nothing. It's just that I'm not actively seeking out places to apply for shows right now. So that's my update for today. And I will check in again when I have more information for you. everyone. Today is Monday, the 14th of November, and I've been thinking about this thing that I heard on a podcast that was interviewing a filmmaker who does a lot of advice for artists and how to make their videos compelling and interesting for viewers. And one of the things he talked about was real time, so sewing in real time, because a lot of artists do time lapses. And so if you are someone who is not really familiar with the artistic practice that is being demonstrated, it kind of warps your perception of how long it actually takes to do the task that is being done. And I thought that was really interesting. So I'm playing around with that idea in my mind, and I don't know how that will manifest in my vlogs, because to take, as much video as it would take for me to sew a whole strand onto one of these rivers, for example, is actually quite a long time. And I was like thinking about Jason from Old Blues Chapter and Verse. He does something called stitch or chat with the yarn or something like that, where he knits while he's chatting to the camera about whatever issue he wants to talk about. So I was thinking about that as well, and how I could kind of integrate that into my practice in terms of my studio vlogs, or if they should be separate videos where I'm chatting about something and sewing in real time at the same time, so that you would actually get a perception of how long it takes me to sew a length. And there certainly is evidence of that out there. For instance, when I do lives, and I've never done a YouTube live, I've only done Instagram lives, and so I'm curious. Like, I'm just throwing all these things around in my head and trying to figure out how I could incorporate that into what I show you about my practice. And so if any of you have any ideas, or if any of you have any opinions, like for instance, if I announced a YouTube live where I was sewing real time, like, would you come and hang out with me? Would you sew alongside me? Would you make artwork with me? Or would you be interested in just chatting while I'm sewing and doing a YouTube live? Or, is that more of an Instagram thing that you would either do or be interested in? So yeah, just throwing those things out there, thinking about real time, thinking about sharing how long it actually takes to make something like this, because people always ask me, how long does that take you? And I don't count the hours. I really don't, because it's not about that for me. It takes a long time. It's a long time thing, but the length is variable depending on the piece and the amount of handwork that's in it. So anyway, that's what I was thinking about today, and I will check in with you again on another day. Good morning, everybody. Today is November 23rd, and I finally have a studio day. I have not had a lot of studio days in November, but I have one today. So I'm going to be a busy little bee trying to get a lot done on the poetry project. It got a little bit delayed because of the way that I am doing the poems. I had to wait for my partner to send me her poems, and it took a bit longer, so I got kind of behind. And also, I just haven't had consistent time that I could work on this. And so today is the day I'm going to get going on it and try to get at least one page and one panel done, and then put the words on from the last two poems, from the number 8 poem and from number 9. So it's coming along. I do need to pick up momentum if I'm going to get all the pages complete before the end of the year, which was my goal. What else can I tell you? Otherwise, it's pretty quiet. I have purposefully kind of disengaged from looking for show opportunities. I think I already said that. I'm just going to focus on picking out a couple residencies to apply to for 2023. I do potentially have a show in June back in my hometown gallery where I showed this year. It would be a smaller little display of a few of my pieces, but I feel like that is right now good enough for me. I just need to really focus on making and really get into that rhythm right now of making. As the year is winding down, it just doesn't feel like a time that I can ramp up. It feels like a time that I need to kind of settle into making and not be isolated, but be kind of disengaged from putting my practice outward. And I really want to focus on the inner feelings of it, the inner rhythm of it. Yeah, so that's where I am with that. And you're going to see some of my day today. And I think I may get one more work day in on Friday, and then I will conclude the vlog there. So come along with me today. Hey everyone. Okay, I thought I would maybe try to talk you through my thought process as I'm making a page for the book. So the first thing I do is take the poem and write it out in my very old Falling Apart sketchbook. I'm on my very last pages here. I write it out and then I look for the lines that appeal to me. So here I underlined these 4 lines of the poem. So this poem is called Aberration by Rebecca Ellison. And so the words that stood out for me, the lines that stood out for me were, and just for a moment, paths of light, the immense migration, and you hear the rush. So those were the lines that stood out to me. This page is going to be the start of a new stanza. This poem has 3 4-line stanzas in it. And so the line that I chose to begin this last stanza is, and just for a moment. And so what I'm doing is taking those words, I leave the sketchbook out while I'm constructing the page, and I'm thinking about the overall sense of the poem. For instance, the second line, paths of light. So I like that visually in my head to think about creating a page, like putting fabric together that would create some sort of path of light. So I'm looking through my fabrics. I pre-selected a whole bunch of fabrics that I keep in this box so that there is a continuity to what fabrics are in the book. They're not all the same, and some of them are very, very different, in fact, but I know that I'm only selecting from this box of fabric. The other thing I know is that I'm always putting this fabric in. To each page, there's a piece of this fabric, and each panel of the quilt as well. And so I chose this fabric as kind of a continuity element. The color was really important because it also connects back to the earlier piece, Poet's Thread, that I did in this series. So this dark blue. So I always know I'm going to be including a piece of this fabric in the page and on each panel. And then I just kind of look through the book and then choose some fabric. So this fabric I just put on the ironing board. It's got kind of a crackled blue. So this felt like paths of light. I'm kind of using paths of light because in Just for a Moment is not really evoking imagery for me, but it is the line that I think would work best in the poem. So I kind of use the whole poem to inspire the sewing, but I don't necessarily think of that one line that I'm going to be putting on the words on the page as the only inspiration for the whole page. Okay, so I will maybe check in again in a few minutes once I've assembled a bit more of it and then talk more about it then. Okay, I've come a little bit further here, and these pages come together actually really quickly, so I just wanted to check in before I started to sew. So what came to me was these, in terms of paths of light, I was thinking about these strips of fabric and then these smaller points of white. I do tend to put the words, when I embroider the words with my machine, onto lighter fabric, so I do need to have something about as wide as 2 strips that is light enough to have the words across it so that they'll be legible. So this is where I am right now, but this is kind of a new, I haven't made a page that's quite so organized as this, so that has like a sense of a pattern to it at all. The rest of them have been very, very random. But this is what's coming to me today. So because this process is really intuitive, I just go with it. So I just wanted to show you this stage, and I'll check in again once I've started sewing it together. Hi, checking in again. Okay, the page is complete. So the process of sewing it together can go pretty quickly once I've kind of got a basic layout, and almost always I have to add a bit more on just to make it the right size, because as you sew on the back, you're losing some of your width, because I don't make this super precise. I don't cut this and measure, and it's not about precision here. It's about moving in a flow and creating that way. So if I have to add a piece on, I just add a piece on, and I don't think too hard about it. So this page is now complete. What I'll do now is I'm going to move on to making the panel for the quilt that corresponds with this page. And for that, oh, I don't have them here. I'm going to grab a strip of this cotton batting, and I'm going to start sewing right directly onto the batting. So it's like a quilt as you go method. It just speeds it up. I do piece a little bit sometimes and then attach it and then quilt it right away, but I quilt quite quickly as I'm doing those. And on this panel is going to be a small panel. So I have some that are a bit shorter, and then I made 4 that are long, so they're kind of going to be the anchor edges of the quilt. But of course I will have to figure that all out when I'm sewing it all together. But that's my design concept in my head as I'm making them. So what I did was, as I was using some of this fabric, I put it to the side so that I know that I want to use a lot of the same pieces. It won't be all the same fabric, but there'll be enough pieces that you could correlate if you were looking at the panel and the page to connect them. So I'm going to work on that next, and then I will check in again when I'm going to start doing the words, and I have to change the thread in the machine to do that and set it all up. It's a process of programming it into the little computer on the machine. So I will check in again then. Hey everybody. Okay, so I have finished the new panel and the new page, and I now have 3 pages and 3 panels that need the paint put on. So the paint is kind of like an ink blot. That's what I'm thinking about, like people writing and writing poetry, and you're writing it with a pen, and then there's an ink blot. So that's what the paint represents on the pages. So it's kind of a hearken to the fact that these are they're being created, and creation is kind of messy, and yeah, so sorry, I hope that makes sense, but they're ink blots. That's what they're meant to be. I need to put the ink blots on these next 3 pages so that I can do the final stitching on the top. And I also need to do I do also do the ink blots on the panels, but I don't stitch those by hand. So that process takes quite a while because I have to lay them out, put the paint on, and then let them dry. So I'm going to do that now. And then I have mom stuff to do today. And if I have any more time to work on artwork, I will work on the river quilt. So that is the plan now. So I'm going to give you a look at the final piece. Okay, so when it all came together, this is it with the quilt backing behind it and the text that was going onto it in just for a moment. And then it will get its ink blot slash paint, and these are the other two that I'm going to be putting the paint onto, and the panels over here. So I'll show you what they look like when they've got the paint on them.
Some days like all this stuff is I don't own any art books. I feel like I should own more. And it's just nice to have. They're also a business expense, so it's just like I should start getting more art books. So behind the scenes, inspiration.
You have one you prefer?
Hey everybody, so this is my final check-in for today's work. The ink blots are drying here on the table. You can see I put the paint on pretty thick, so it can take, maybe an hour, 2 hours for them to completely dry. This is page 7. Page 8, page 9 that I was working on earlier. And I put 3 little ink blots on this one. Yeah, so that was a pretty productive day, and now I'm going to go do some mom stuff.